recording. Okay. All right. Okay, that's good. So there is this website that I like to use, and it is for insurance. So insurance, let me see if I can find it. Demo. Insurance website, something like this. So the reason why we use this website right here, and there's a few things I'll tell you, is because not only that we have a lot of options in terms of automation, this application is actually suitable for writing good automated test cases. And number 3 reason is that you're not going into somebody else's live application and trying to automate and causing them like some sort of panic. So imagine like you try to automate Facebook, like login and things like that, and you're like hitting the login server again and again and again. There is something called spike arrest, meaning if you try hard enough, and let's say now you're within like 30 seconds, you tried like 30 times, 30 attempts. If Facebook has a rule in the spike arrest to say, okay, if that happens, I want that IP to be blocked for like 30 minutes or 1 hour, right? Something like that. So now you're causing them panic, and you're also getting yourself blocked from these websites. So let's not do that. But most importantly, this costs them money too, because whenever you click on something, it gives you data, right? This data has to come from a database. Now, the database has to be in a server, so that way this data can be transferred whenever you need it, because every time you click on it, what happens? This data is not here, right? It basically comes through tunnels, right? The tunnels are called API. So literally this website is just a template that has data, and I'm talking about real website. Let's say geico.com. The customer's information is coming through, let's say, tunnels, right? And these are API that serves specific data. So let's say customer's home address, it'll be one API. Its job is to bring the home address as long as you provide the right authorization key and right user. So user will be identified by a specific encrypted key, right? To make sure that it is bringing the right user information. So now think about this way. Anytime a company wants to replace a website, they don't have to worry about nothing. They just, on the side, they can just develop the whole website and plug in those APIs, because the APIs are the one that are responsible for delivering all the data. Now, non-data related websites are basically the logo. Even the logo sometimes comes from API if the company cares about it. The option in your dropdown will be coming from API. These paragraphs and like this, let's say header of the page, these are like static. For example, let's say they just put it just like that. But anytime you click on it and a bunch of information shows up, it's coming from a database. User information probably coming from a database, and everything nowadays is going to be API, API, API. And how do I know this, right? Even this one has API, even though it's a demo website. So you go into inspect, you go into network, okay? And then let's say we are clicking on apartment building owners. Click on that, and you'll see a bunch of network requests is firing. All right. And then if you click on, let's say just the page XHR, no, okay, all, and then I need to remove some of these, like for example, JS and image. These are like the front end, right? But anyway, so if I click on this is the API. You have a get request, and you're saying what I want to get. You're saying I want the apartment buildings, all of it, right? And then if you look at the response, it just delivered everything, right? So similar to that, whenever you write your test and everything, you have 2 levels of testing, right? One is the UI testing, and the other one is API. And we'll do a separate class for the API testing. But one thing for you to note is that we do API testing, and every company will basically have some sort of API for you to do the test. But this website is going to be for you, like for the rest of remaining classes you're going to be using this website is because it's not just one, right? For example, you got the personal insurance and you got business insurance. Personal has auto and then everything else. Think about each one of them is a team. Okay, so now if this, let's say this insurance company, Geico, they do ATV, auto insurance, boat, all of them, it's a different team. So your team, for example, auto. So let's say you work for Geico, your team is auto. You click on auto, and this is the application that you are working on is for auto insurance quote request, for example. So you can give it a abbreviation AIQR. So you work in AIQR team, for example. So now what is this? Who is the end user for this AIQR application? The end user is an agent, right? Somebody who's going to be able to log in and be able to take the information from a customer and start to move forward to the next step, right? Okay, and then continue. Okay, zip code should be 5 digits. So that's a validation message. It didn't want to. Okay, so you go into the step 4 from step 1 all the way, and every step will take some information about the customer. And then at the end, it will provide a premium. Like, okay, so 6 months, you got to pay this much and so on, right? And the decision will be made by looking at the customer's information. Even the DMV record will be integrated within this application, and the API will be used from pulling data from DMV. That will be done automatically. And there will be a process to review that customer has how many people living in the same address and things like that. And that's how they know like how many people lives in your household. So if you have a 16 years old or 17 years old, you don't want them to show in your insurance, but you use the same address. Even if you don't show it, they will include it because that person stays, that person has the same address as you. So they will probably include it in the insurance policy. But what about the address? Address gets validated by USPS API. So USPS gives you a specific API, and that API's job is to validate the address to make sure there's a suggestion. Whenever you write your address in any one of those applications, if you ever used it, and it says, wait a minute, your address is supposed to be this. And it gives you a suggestion, slight modification, maybe that there is no dashes, maybe there is a dash. And that validation is done by many APIs. One of the easiest API and cheapest API, probably USPS. And USPS says, okay, here is our API that you can use to validate the address is correct, but we're going to charge a fee. Okay, so USPS is charging a fee. So if I'm a company and this is my insurance company and I want to use their API, they will give me the access and authorization to use it, but they will probably say, okay, 1 million requests per day, and you have to pay us, like, let's say $100,000, right? Something like that, like for the whole year. So I bought a license to use for the whole year, 100,000, and now I can make 100,000 requests. So every time I validate a user's address, I'm paying some money to USPS. That's one. The second thing is credit score. The other thing is credit score. So how do we know what is the credit score? Do we just go and get the customer separately and just go to the Experian or something and get them credit score? No, we don't do that because that will be a lot of lengthy process and we will probably spend more money that way. So instead we call Experian and any one of those credit keeping company and ask them for their API. So we say, okay, we're going to make request, give us an API access. They will give us an API access. Now, as long as I have the right information, I'll be able to pull somebody's credit score. There is different options. They will probably say soft pull is free, meaning you can actually pull somebody's credit score as long as they already got a hard inquiry by something else. They will take that data and give it to you because it was already pulled. Customer is not affected. So that may be free for the company to use, but then you'll still have to do a hard inquiry if you're a credit card company or if you are a lending company. So basically they make deals with bigger companies where they somehow get those data. One company to another company, the data comes by using API. Otherwise, I cannot give access to a third-party company of my database. I'm a company, for example. Now, if that company goes down for whatever reason, I also go down because they have access to my database. That means compromising their data and things like that. Instead, I give them a tunnel. Here is a pipe. You can, or straw. Here is a straw, and you can sip as much as you need, but we will put a meter on the straw to monitor what you're pulling, and we'll only let you pull whatever we will allow you to. And we also want you to comply with our rules and regulation, right? So that's how API works. So an insurance company, again, giving you guys some domain knowledge here. If you're auto insurance, right? In order for the agent to say, basically, okay, your 6 months is this, is all of that information comes from different places like DMV, USPS, experience, even the public record, meaning that person doesn't have a bankruptcy or domestic violence and things like that. All of that information gets into one place, and then it gets to a decision engine, meaning like a series of code makes a decision based off those data and say, okay, this person doesn't have accident in the last 5 years. This person do not have a 16 years old at home. And this person did not claim anything for the last 5 years. So we'll give him this rate, right? So these are some of the decisions, or at least the data they look at in order to make the decision. Sometimes the reason for getting the car, meaning if you're using it for work, is going to be higher. Your mileage usage for the year, if you put higher, then it's going to be higher, right? So all of that information goes into an account before they can even make a decision. So now, if you have insurance company in your resume and auto insurance, for example, so you can say, I worked in auto insurance, and the application that I was dealing with is basically for the agents to use, who's going to take customers' data and then provide them with 6 months premium. Is that it's not that hard to describe that right now. Now the question is, how did you test it? What were you testing? What were you testing? Can you give me a little bit detail about what were you testing? Then you can say, well, what about a customer that have maybe a 16 years old at home? What would be his rate versus somebody who doesn't? What about a customer who's requesting a quote from New Jersey versus somebody who's from New York? What are some things that should be different? What about a customer? So these are different scenarios I'm telling you, right? What about a customer whose zip code has highest numbers of vandalism, for example? That means your car gets broken into and people do all kind of stuff. In that zip code, what should be the premium? In that zip code, should we even provide them with full coverage, right? Because we're going to most likely lose money, and so on. So a lot of the things that I just said in terms of scenario, you will be testing to say if it worked properly. So for example, now if you're simulating a New Jersey customer, you have to create the customer first. So now there's two ways to do that. If you're an admin, if you got admin access in Q environment, you can create the customer and provide the right information before doing the testing. The other one is to go into database and just write a query. All right, write a query, find a customer that belongs to New Jersey, and then use that customer. If you want to simulate a customer who missed 3 payments, right, and his let's say policy is expired after all that warning, you cannot do that like right away, right? If you create a customer, he will not have 3 payment missed, and you cannot just go back in time. So what you do, you find a customer who missed 3 payments by writing a database query, and then you will use that customer for your test case. So the test data that you will pull, sometime you'll have to use database, right, to go back and forth. So just keep in mind. All right, so let's now, I guess, like, now that we talked about a little bit about the domain, this website, not only auto, but if you look into other, you got flood insurance, you got homeowner insurance, you got the even I think healthcare insurance. I think there were, okay, there you go, pet insurance. Where is the healthcare? Okay, Medicare supplements, some supplemental insurance, personal umbrella rental. So You can choose whatever insurance company, whatever insurance division here, and then use that for your own test case that you will develop, right? So just keep that in mind. So for today, we're gonna choose auto, okay? And auto, if you are working on something, I would say don't choose auto because that's something that we as a group are gonna be working with. And if you wanna choose something else, that will be better. So now our goal is to come to this. So I'm gonna give you guys a test case first. The test case is I'm gonna enter first name, okay, last name, address, phone number, and 5-digit. I want to click on continue, next, and I want to see if the first name, last name, email address, phone number, and zip code is carried to the next step. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to see that if this information is being saved, so that way I don't have to retype this. The next step. Is that a valid test case and valid test scenario?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a valuable test? Is it a value? Is it a high priority test or is it a valuable test? So the last page, I came here and I'm now entering this. Tell me if this is a really valuable test and it's a high priority test.
I think it's a valuable test because it allows the user to have the convenience of being able to have his information already put in. So as it goes on to the next step, he doesn't have to re-enter all that all over again. So it'll be more of a convenience sake for him. I wouldn't put it as high priority because then there might be some people that might have made a mistake, and if they in the first page and if it transfers over to the second page, it might that same mistake might transfer over. So the second page allows them to kind of have the option to rectifying that mistake.
Okay, so you got it partially correct, right? And I would say it is a high priority. You know, it's because it's not about the some people. So I'll give you the scenario. You're an agent, right? Your job is to call people around. Hey, I have a good insurance. I can give you a good rate. Okay, so this is the website that you use. And then you call the person and the guy's interested and says, hey, yeah, sure. My name is John. My last name is Doe. My Gmail email is johndoe@gmail.com. And my phone number is this. And you typed it in and then you go to the next page. Now all of that is missing. You're like, hey, I'm so sorry, John. Can you just repeat your name one more time? Can you just give me your email address one more time? Can you just give me your phone number? The guy hanged up. You see what I'm saying?
Very valid. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the customer hangs up. Not even like, okay, if the customer is super patient, okay, let's look at the best case scenario here. Customer is very patient, but let's say I have 50,000 agents and these companies have more than that. So I have like maybe 100,000 agents who's spending extra 30 seconds per call because of this. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. If I can save 1 second for a step, that's going to be also a lot of time saving if you really do your calculation. Time is equal to money. So therefore, these guys that work in call centers, they get hourly paid. So you're actually saving money if you do have the ability to reduce some of their struggle. So this is going to be really, really high priority test case. But this test case can be combined with other test cases. So it doesn't have to be by itself. You immediately validate that the information that you entered is showing up here. And you have to track it too. You have to basically track what you entered first. So that means we're looking at an instance variable for this information. So that way we can later use and to say, okay, the first name and last name should be this, right? How do I know that the phone number should be this? Is by first, when I choose the phone number, I want to also record and say, okay, this is my variable, and I want to check later to say this number was moved over to the next page. So when I say combination, so when it comes about manual testing, you don't combine things, right? You do one check, you're done, go to the next test case. But since you're doing automation, if you're already in this page, isn't it better to say, okay, I'm also going to test right after I check this, I'm going to do another test case, which is to see if I can go to the next page by not entering required fields. So this is a required field. This is an indication that this field is absolutely required. This field is absolutely required. And so is this one. So what if I try to go continue without the address? Okay. And it lets me. That's a bug, right? It shouldn't be that way. So, but this is a demo website, so I can understand from their point of view. But that's a bug. So at this point, this will be something that you log as a bug, right? But it shouldn't have done it. Let's go back to the next and previous page. So it shouldn't have done it because of the address right here. Let's see if I try to not enter zip code. If it does it, that'll be something, right? Yeah, it does it. So basically, again, like keep in mind when you find the bug, that's great. Create a bug report. But this is going to be a demo website, so not everything is going to work as expected. So all right, so we described our test case. We just want to for the day, we just want to check if this is correct, and then if we have time, we're going to also make sure that we can go to the next page after entering all of the record information. That's the idea. Okay. All right, so now we have our test class, package. Inside of the package, I'm going to create a new test file. So everything will start with the feature file, right? And let's see. This is a demo insurance. So we're going to say auto insurance, right? So just got to name something that is relative to what we are doing. So I'm going to say auto. No, this is not a class. I have to turn on the AC. Let's check, guys. Okay. So create a file right there. And then you're going to say auto dash insurance page one test, for example, page one, right? Test dot feature. So you give it a nice name that is related, but again, you go with the flow. You don't try to do something new. You basically see how they named it and you follow that. And you don't have to, you can always ask them like, hey, is it okay? And then this is how I named it. They will probably correct you when you ask them for a review. Everything, all the code that you'll write, somebody's going to review it. And then only then it will go into the master. So now feature, we got to write something, right? Feature is like objective. What do you want to do? So I'm going to say as a insurance agent, I should be able to enter all customer data in order to provide them the best. I just came up with this. You can write whatever you want, but then I'm just writing an objective. This is not code. Anytime you write something in the feature, it's not code. But many, like 99% of the time, this is something that business writes, okay? And then you just copy and paste it here. Okay, so you don't have to actually write this. It'll be done for you, most likely. But if it doesn't, then you know what to do, right? You read the requirement and see what is your objective. And based off of that, you're gonna write the objective and then you write your scenario one at a time. So the first test case we talked about is that verify user, verify customers data saves from page one and moves to page two, right? So given I'm on the auto insurance page one, right? So now and then when I enter, let's say now first, I can make everything reusable if I want to, right? Customer information, let's see. We got the first, last email, phone number, and address. Sorry, let's go back to the first one. It doesn't have a back button, so that could be about two. First name, last name, email, phone number, and zip code. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fields. So I can say enter first name. I'm going to make it reusable so we can use it again. Last name, and then I enter email, And so email address should be something like this, and phone number. Okay, so you entered that email and phone number, and the last one is zip code. And I entered customer zip code. Then I click on the next step, right? And I should see, then I verify, right? So it should be another then. Then I verify all prior data is there, right? So you can decide, you can actually, then I verify, let's say first name should be something, last name should be something, and okay, email should be something, phone number should be something, and zip should be something, right? That's it. So you're verifying name, last name, email, phone number, and zip code. So far so good, right? So we wrote our test almost like a dry run. And now we can go ahead and run our scenario. It'll probably give us the code. Let's see. Okay, so it's giving us the code and everything. So go ahead, let's start doing the first one, create a step definition. I'm going to put it in my step because we already have it, but we can, when we do page object, we'll probably move it to its own place. Okay, so notice how it already gave me a nice name. I don't want to change that because then I will have to change it for everything. This is called camel casing, which means the first letter of the whole string is lowercase. And after that, every word will have uppercase. And the reason why they do it, especially in Java, is because it makes it easier for us to read and understand what it is. So I'm on the page number. So we actually don't need an argument here because page number 1 is a 1, right? So I would say I'm on the internet of page 1. I would probably like do it like this. And we don't need an argument because we don't have a reusability situation. We're not going to have we're not going to navigate to another page. We're going to just click next to the next page. So now I'm going to say driver dot get, right? So now I have to get to this specific page. So I have to be very selective about the URL. If I want to be right here, what I would like to do is that if I'm already here and click on this, right, then it validates this link works. But because this is a company website, it maybe most of the agent, they will directly come here, right? So let's remove most of the complexity because the intention of our test case is to validate data rather than testing that link. It could have its own test case at some point. So we'll just paste it here, but we can actually move it to somewhere else if we need to. But for now, this is fine. And then we have to validate we're on the right page because what if we are not, right? So let's go ahead and see if it has a nice title, page title. And guys, anytime when we deal with this kind of things, just make sure you ask the question so we can talk about it. So now this is your expected. Okay, then we gotta say this is data type. This is one of the reason I don't like Java, but you have to tell it. Java is like not, I mean, it needs to know what it is in terms of the data type, right? You go to JavaScript, you go to Ruby, you go to Python, you go and use another language, and they don't care about the type because it automatically detects what it is, right? But Java is pretty unique in this case. So now we want to say something like assert true, and assert equal, right? a third equals. So first one is expected. This is what we were expecting. And the last one is driver dot get page title. Okay, and that's it. So we not only that we went to the browser and went to the page, but we're also validating that we're on the right page. Now, what is the difference between driver.get versus driver.navigate? Okay, what is the difference between that?
Get will open the website, but navigate will not open. Just check it. I mean,
Navigate,
in the browser.
get will basically also wait for the page to finish loading. Navigate will not. We'll go to the it'll do the similar work. It's just not going to wait until it's finished loading. So notice, like when you visit a website, it has this loading thing right here. If you use get method, it already have a built-in mechanism to say, okay, I want to wait until this spinning thing goes away. And how does it know that the spinning thing is still there? It looks into this area and says, okay, if there's anything that the application is waiting for in terms of the request and response. Okay, so just know that there's an interview question. Okay,
So get is better, right?
Get is better. Navigate you use only if you know exactly when you need it, right? Navigate is a very specific reasons why you use, and you better know why you're using it. But get,
Okay.
you use it for everything. So the next one, entering the first name, last name. So, cancel by entering the first, last. Come on, it's pretty slow. Okay. So notice like it's string right there, string right there. So this is argument. The first one is first name, last name. So what I like to do is rename them so it's easier for the code to read. So we're already in this page. The next thing is driver dot find element, because why? Versus find elements.
It's just one.
It's just one, but also if you still feel confused, you can look at the data types. This is a list. Anytime you have more than one, it's a list. And you're dealing with only one first name in the page, right? So now we can say ID, whatever it is that we can use. The first name is, let's see, first name have an ID and a name. Which one would you use and why? You got both name and the ID.
First, we have to check by using Control F if it's unique or not.
Okay, so let's see. We will do that for now. Okay, so what am I doing? Okay, Command F, Control F for the Windows user. So name, I can say something like this. Name, ID, I know here is unique, but the name is also unique. Okay, so now you have a unique name and a unique ID. Why would you use name versus ID or ID versus name, and why? What is the priority you're putting here? There has to be a logical reason, right? So I don't want to take too much time here, but we want to choose ID because ID was meant to be unique. But recently, or at least with the recent technology, ID gets created automatically by the system. So now the ID is no longer, sometimes we cannot rely on it, right? Because it may be unique or it may not be unique. That's why we have to test it every time. But since ID is meant for its uniqueness, we want to use ID. ID is like the first choice. If it's there, why not, right? Why do we want to go through hoops and loops when we can just use simply ID, which was meant to be in the very beginning when we first started to automate, right? Back then, you would ask the developer to create IDs, and they would create it, and they would move on with your testing. If it's not there, you find other ways, but if it's not, then you have to ask them for an ID. All right, so we got the ID. We want to enter some data. So now if you want to enter some data, because we're reusing, all you got to do is just say, okay, I want to enter anything that belongs to first name variable. Okay. And the second one, as we know already, I'm going to use name. So that way we can see we're using more than just ID. And this is probably L name, if I can guess. Let's see. Yep, L name. That's great. And then we have to say last name. And now this will work for both, right? So now we can enter, let's say, John, and then I don't know, go, whatever. And then we go into the next one, create a definition in this. Again, we got the string. So argument should be string, but we know the email address right there. So I'm going to say email. And the next one, the phone number. So I'm going to say phone. So phone number is basically, it's a number. So why is it a string, guys? I'll let you guys think about that. Why is it a string?
Because we don't do any calculation with the phone numbers. Like just
Yeah, but then you have to also think about the other things, like when you need to find element, and then let's say by .id, for example, in this
Well,
case, and then
Isn't the number
let's
going
say,
to be? Sorry.
so let's see, look at the send keys, right? Send keys takes sequence of characters, right? But it takes string. It also takes strings. It cannot just take numbers. Okay, it has to be like sequence of characters. So now here it will be a string. So if you want to enter a number, you can't. Selenium also not going to accept a number for you to enter, right? On the UI, whenever you enter something, like even though this is the phone number, as far as the data is going, the application is first taking the front end, basically first taking. So let's think about bouncers, right? In a club, the bouncers are the front end at this point, first taking the data. When the data has been taken, it actually goes in as a string. And then once it's in there, then it gets converted. It understands something different. So if I enter a number here, I still have to enter a string. But then the application will process the data to say, okay, these characters, it must be a 5-digit number, and it will do the validation on its side, not the customer side. I don't have to deal with those validation. I just enter the number. I don't have to say it has to be a number, right? So Selenium is mimicking human. Therefore, if it doesn't ask the human to say enter a specifically number, then Selenium can do the same thing as human as well, right? So even here we can enter, what happened? We can enter like strings, right? So it's not a problem. So email address, we're putting email, and then same thing. I'll just copy the whole thing. The only thing that'll be different is that phone number, and then I have to find out the value for the phone number. Okay, and then email address, let's say John at gmail.com. And then you got the phone number, maybe like 888-777-666. And then we have to do zip code. All right, let's see. Create a step definition, my step. And the reason why we basically automate this, at least this website, is because it has a lot of fields for us to kind of deal with. So it gives you a lot more, web elements to deal with, and so it's good for learning. But there will be some bugs, that obvious bugs. You can disregard those. Driver.find element. All right, by dot. Let's see, what's the zip code? And sometimes you will see the patterns, right? The pattern is basically, if you know that this one have ID, the chances of this one having ID is high because they probably created at the same time. So you see ID zip is there. So I'll continue to use ID. And then it's called zip docs and keys. And I just want to use the zip because that is also a string. Once that is done, zip code is maybe like 11102 for example, and I have to click next. Okay, so next I will go ahead and, okay, let's see up to this much, right? And then we'll fix those. Go ahead and run this first. Okay, so now we have a problem with my driver. So let's see, what is the problem with the driver at this point? It says that driver, okay, get string because this driver is null. Okay, why? All right, we didn't, okay. So think about this way. This guy is up here and we're trying to create the driver and it is already inside of, it is inside of a method that we haven't even called. Make sense? So this probably makes sense to put it somewhere else at this point for us to continue to be able to use. And then, okay, let's see. Let me see if I move this. I need to move this up there too. Actually this too, so that way I can continue to use. Why is this guy upset? He doesn't want me to use it if you're blah, 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 maybe. Okay, so let's put the driver separate, okay? Because we're using the driver, and as you know, just here we are having a problem where you can see that this specific driver, we're calling it in this step, but this step is never being used for our new test, right? The new test that we just wrote, it's not being used. So we're going to create a page object at this point, and then from there we can probably call. So I'm going to create like a package, maybe like my objects, and then I'm going to say class. So we have to see what kind of object. So this could be like driver, right? So maybe driver .java. So what do you guys think I will use now? If I want to use subclass and superclass, do you guys remember anything?
Abstract. I'm sorry, not abstract. Inheritance.
Inheritance. There you go.
Sorry, yeah, not abstract.
No problem. So now we have to move the driver here. Okay, and then once we're done with the driver, we'll just call it. So, okay. So first, we need this too. Okay, web driver. Let's see. We'll probably do public void public web driver equal to my driver, for example. Like, I don't know. We can always rename this, but and then we gotta put it inside there. And then you see how driver is upset. So you can say web driver. Import class. This is a new class, so it just doesn't know what is going on here. So let's see, opening. We have an opening here, and we have an opening here. Let's see, what is it? That is upset for. Okay, let's see. Okay, return statement. Okay, so we have to return something, right? Because if we're gonna grab something, we have to return something. So I'm gonna add a return, and I'm gonna do the driver. So it will return driver if we, and it will do Chrome driver at this point. Okay. Okay, so then, now that we have the driver, if I want to use it, let's say here, I can simply say extends, and I have to create the, okay, so first extends the driver class, right? Where is my driver class? My object right there. Once I do that, then the next thing I have to do is that I have to create a object before I can use, right? So the way that I will create object, it's simply just say, let's say driver, because that's the class name, and you give it like, let's say my browser or something, I don't know, whatever name you want to give, is equal to new driver. Okay. All right, and it's gonna be confusing a little bit. I will explain to you guys. So now that I have the instance of this class right here, so I can use it. The name is browser. Inside of the browser, there is a method called my driver. Okay, and that's something that we have to call in order to get the driver. Who's confused? Anybody? Okay, so nobody's confused. That's great. So now, what if I want to take it to next step? What if I want to say, if let's say driver is equal to like something, right? Let's say Chrome. Then I want to do this. If driver is equal to Firefox, I want to do this. That is entirely possible. So we're not going to go to that extent, at least today. And let's just go ahead and finish where we started and at least finish few test cases. So now driver browser is equal to driver, blah, blah. So this is a class name. This is also a class name. The only thing we giving ourselves is the name browser. I can also say drivers lowercase, right? And now there's a problem because this driver is just a variable, right? So that's why I wouldn't just replace that with lowercase driver yet. So I can say my driver, and then, but this is going to confuse you. So I'm going to give it a completely new name. Okay, so browser is just the name. Then I'm going to say that WebDriver is equal to browser dot my driver. That's it. Simply that. Okay. So now driver has a meaning in this page. The meaning of the driver means is that it's going to go ahead and pull the method, which is from my driver, and then my driver is responsible for returning the driver, which is a type is WebDriver. So we're already getting WebDriver back. So let's go back in here real quick. So, and this is a WebDriver type 2, so we're good to go. But now, if we go to the driver, it should not have any problem if you say driver.get from whatever you want. Let's just make sure this is fine. We want to remove this. We no longer need it here, and we are all good to go. So now, if we should probably take this because this belongs to the driver itself. So it's gonna say this. Okay, and so maybe like something more like setting up driver. And you can say, oh, this is after return, it shouldn't be. Okay, we'll leave it like this. Otherwise, I can put another comment right here. It's okay. I think I'm happy with what we have. Okay. So how many people didn't get this? Just say, and then I'll tell you what to, like, maybe explain a little better, and I'll tell you what to focus on here. Anybody or everybody got it? Then I'm going to ask you a question. So
I understood it to
Okay.
the point where we were adding the driver. Then I would just have to rewatch the video to really understand it completely again. But that's about it.
Okay. All right. So notice, like, we're up to this much. This was our intention. In the process of creating a new task, we decided to isolate our driver to a separate location. We have the class name driver. So every time you want to you reuse an object or you want to call an object, you have to do inheritance, right? And the main class. So this is where we inheriting driver class, and then anytime you want to call out any method, which is like objects from a class, you have to create the instance of it. The way you do that, you basically use the keyword new, and you put the same name for the class name and give it whatever name you want. And then now inside of this guy, basically virtual is this page, whatever method you have, you can call by using the variable name. And that's exactly what we did. So this is an example of inheritance, and we're going to be doing that for page object pattern. We will not use like built-in page object factory. There is a library for that. We will just create ourselves, so that way we have more understanding about this page object and how it's helping us. We no longer need these imports, and we're good to go. Okay, so now that we are at that page and we freely can move around because our driver is separate, we can now continue to create the next step. Okay, create a step definition, my step. And the next step is basically the same thing. And notice like how I was able to like move everything and not have to worry about updating anything else, because I'm reusing the same name. Driver find, and then this. So here I have to click on continue. Two ways I can do it. This happens to be a button. So I can say button is, let's say, there is a class name I can use. There is an ID that I can use. Okay, so whatever I want to use, I can use at this point. I can also even use the text if I want to, but I'll probably use the ID since it's already provided. But what if I want to use the class name? So let's do that. Okay, so button dot class name. Every time you see a class has a space in between, 1, 2 space there, that means each one is a separate class name, separated by a space. So you cannot just expect it to work just like this. Hold on, let me show you. So when you want to use a class name, you have to put a dot front of it if you want to make it a CSS locator. So if I copy and paste it here, it will show as a unique because it is detecting the specific text. But if you want to use as a class name, you have to put a dot front of the space. So button is a class name. So I'll do a dot. And then I will do a dot, remove the space, and then I'll do a dot right front of this one and a space. That's it. This is going to be a class. So I combined 3 different classes to make it a one CSS selector. So now I can delete whatever portion out of this CSS selector unnecessary. So for example, this one. Now I'm using only button dash success. I can even use this submit if I need to. So I'll just use the CSS selector at this point. That's it. And dot click. Okay, so that's what we are doing because it's a button, right? That's the class name. Once that took place, once we go to the next one, what happens next, right? So let's just see. One, 5 should be fine. Move on to the next. We're in this page, right? So now we have to validate. Before we validate, what do we do? What do we do? We have to validate the right, if we are in the right page or not. So usually you want to use the page title, but as you can see, page title is same as before. The last page title and this page title is same. So basically it cannot be used, but what can be used is that steps. Okay, so these data can be used to validate you're in the right page. So this is H3 and this is progress ID. So I'm going to use H3 and progress ID. So anytime you have something like this, you can right click actually right here and then copy selector, which is CSS selector. As you can see, progress ID more than H3 will give you the exact text. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to put my expected. I'm going to basically make sure that I'm on the right page, the next page. So I'm going to say driver. First, I'm going to create my expectation dot find element. And remember, if you don't put expectation, the test will never fail. Therefore, your test is not doing anything. Okay. So I'm going to say as a selector, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say get text. Okay. So get text. This is my actual text validation that I'm validating, and then I need the expected. Oh, so this is actually, yeah, okay. String, what am I expecting? Because of this, I do have to say something like that. So my actual should be this, right? Because that's what we want to make sure that this is there. All right, so I'm going to copy that. And this. Right, so this is what we want to validate when we get to the next page. We're looking for ID, progress ID, which has H3 header inside of it. And we want to grab the text and then compare with this to make sure we're on the right page. Assert. And that's it. So now not only we clicked on it, we also basically validated something. Okay. Let's go ahead and run it before we want to move on to the next validation. All right, so we're already in the next page, and as you can see, that it passed, right? But we haven't asked to close it. So at this point, we want to validate that first name has this data, last name is this, so we can validate that. Let's go ahead and create our expectation. That's the last one, and creates the definition. This, okay. So a lot of arguments. So start labeling them. The first one is first name. The second one is last name. Okay. Third one is email. And the fourth one is phone number. The fifth one is zip. Okay, so now in order for me to validate that I have this data, I have to pull it directly from those elements. So in the new page, when we go to the next page, this is a completely new elements. We cannot reuse the previous elements. Okay, every time you refresh a page and you go to the next page, even if you are staying in the same page and you refresh, whatever element you had attached to is no longer attached to it, meaning you cannot use it anymore. You have to call it again. So because we moved into the next page from the first page, even though the ID is same, we're not going to be able to reuse. We have to call it again. Okay, so that's the way it's going to be. So let's go ahead and do that. Expected first name is equal to something, right? Expected first name is equal to this. This is the expected name. So we don't have to actually type it in. We'll just do actual, right? Actual first name. So we want to grab it directly from the field. So we're going to say driver and it's a string. So we're going to say driver dot find element. We're going to say by dot maybe like ID. So let's see what's the ID, especially on the page number 2. So page number 2, you see the ID is slightly different. Its name is slightly different. So we want to use ID at this point, and then go ahead and use that ID dot get text. So now we always have to be careful when we get text. We want to check if that is in fact a text or a value. So if I click on this and I see that actually the whatever John, if I write a John here, is actually a value, not a text. Okay, so value is equal to this thing right here. So we cannot just say get text. Get text will get me nothing because it doesn't have any. So now I'm going to say get attribute. And now I have to say what attribute? Attribute is value. I want to get the value attribute, so that way I can get the right, information. Okay, so that's the first one. Then I can say expected assert. And the first one, I'm going to say the assert equals. So I'm going to say actual name should be equal to the expected name, which is this, because that's something that we're going to feed in later. So that's the first assertion. We verified the first name and we're done. Okay, so let me just go ahead and say verified first name. Okay, so the next one is verify the last name. So maybe we can say similar. To save time, I will go ahead and paste it, but you guys should type it. Last name, and this is actually ID L name, and the value should be actually the last name. Now I have to make sure the last name exists. L name exists here, so I'm going to click on that. And you can see L name is there. So the next one was email. Email is ID is email, so we can just go ahead and use that. And same thing. Verify email. So I'm going to say actual email is email, and then I have to compare it with email, right? So actual email, actual last name. Okay, makes sense. Anybody is confused? Okay, so we did the email up to email. The next one is phone number and then string. So I can just copy the same lines and paste it for each verification. So actual phone, and this is actual zip. Okay, and now I know that phone number ID should be very similar. We gotta find the phone number. So zip is basically zip, which is fine. Where's my phone number? Right there. Phone number is 1. Okay. So the next one is verify phone. And then value, verify zip. Zip. I just want to make sure they all have value, right? If it's value, then I have to use value. Otherwise, so this one is value, so I'm good there. I want to see the zip code. Zip code is also a value. So everything is value at this point, right? So I just added my assertion and everything seems to be good. So the phone number should be phone that I'm validating against, and then this should be zip, and that's it. Okay, and we have to use actual zip. So, and then we have to use actual phone. All right, that's it. So now that I know what I'm typing, I know what I have to, what I should expect because it's there. I'm already typing this, right? And then email is this. and my phone number is this, and my zip code is this. Does it make sense to parameterize this? Yes, it does, right? So let's see if we can kind of parameterize this. Let's see if it gives me a light bulb, convert to a scenario outline, boom. What do you guys see? I didn't have to retype this again and again. Everything is reusing the data. So that makes sense because you're parameterizing. So what if you enter a completely new person for the second test case? So instead of John, I want to say maybe like, okay, let's say like David. I don't think we have to have quotation, do we? I don't think we have to have quotation. Yeah, we don't have to. Okay, David, something, Smith, or whatever. You should know it's a okay, that's fine. So let's see, email address. We don't need this quotation somehow. Add it here. Okay, never mind. We need the quotation. I don't know. Okay, quotation should be up there, but it's okay. Okay. If we don't have it there, then you have to have it here, which is okay. And then David, and then I can say Smith. 11369 or 368. Phone number is 917-888-1234, whatever it is. So just notice the difference, right? Okay, so just notice the
phone
difference.
numbers.
Huh?
How come there's two phone numbers?
Yeah, there is also, oh, there's two phone numbers. Yeah, that's a good question. It shouldn't be two phone numbers, right? So maybe we added an extra field. So if we, okay, this phone number, email, phone number should be used here, zip code, first name, last name. So how many fields? Let's count. 1, 2, 3,
I think it
4,
added
5.
it from the then and the and.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah. So we don't need this one actually. So if we reuse this phone number right here, then we no longer need this one. Notice how it becomes gray. We no longer need this. So the purpose of even doing this is to reuse. But if we have to type it double time, so it doesn't make sense. But as you can see, we just created two test cases that does the same exact test, but two different data sets, right? First is going to try as John, the second is going to try as David. So let's see. Okay, and it validated. So we have two separate test cases. And so now what you can do, you can on demand change. You can have 20, 30, 40 customers with a different kind of email address, different kind of zip code, different kind of first name, different kind of last name, and that should validate. For example, maybe there is a bug where you entered first name with maybe like the email address with a special character. For example, some people have dashes, right? Something like that. And you go to continue and somehow it didn't bring you, it didn't really register this dash. That means it saved the data without the dash, and it is a significant problem, right? Meaning now it will not go to the right email address. So you want to detect that. So now you can probably try different kind of email address for each user type to make sure that you are kind of, also testing for some special characters in your emails to make sure it works properly. So then in this case, you can not only add one test case, you can add at this point, like 20, 30, 40 test cases with different kind of data, email address, phone number change. You try with a phone number that may be not valid and things like that, and check it to make sure your application works perfectly. Any question, guys? So two things we did, and I would like you guys to do is like we separated the driver. We now can freely write test cases without having the driver in the same step definition. The next class, what I will do, and again, we're taking it pretty easy and slow, so that's fine. The next class, I will probably start to isolate, meaning that this belongs to one type of test and this belongs to another. So we'll probably create objects in this folder for page by page in order to see page object pattern, right? So that's something that we're going to learn next class. But this class, all I want you guys to follow is that how we are able to, again, create outline, scenario outline, but most importantly, created assertions. Okay. And we also reusing most of that's the definitions. These probably the highly reused test cases we ever created so far. If you join a company, right, and they have these visual steps, you might not have to write new test. You might not have to write new code, right? You can just probably reuse and copy and use it to whatever data you want. So let's say one of your test case says user belonging to a specific zip code should not qualify for whatever premium or whatever it is, right? The discount, for example. Let's say student discount. User belonging to zip code 11102 should not have a discount applied. So then you go ahead and at least move up to this much next page. Once you hear in the next page, and maybe like somewhere here, it shows this customer is capable of getting that discount or not. So you can do the validation. The only thing you're going to be writing is the validation that, okay, this customer can or cannot, right? Based on your expectation. So that's why, again, the Cucumber makes it really, really easy for us to automate after some time, because now we can reuse everything. With that said, it's 9:52, guys. I'll leave you guys with few minutes to make sure if you guys have any question. Otherwise, the next class. So this class, many of you guys, some of you guys didn't join, so I'm gonna cut it short, but everybody here, at least that joined, I believe did the homework, which was created those tests. And that's great. So the next class, if you guys do this one, we're gonna learn page object, and then we're gonna go a bit deeper before we start to assign some homeworks, like try to completely automate a specific application from here. So you get to choose an application and we can try to completely automate. Probably gonna take you guys a couple of days if you learned it correctly. And you'll face a lot of problems. Those will teach you, right? After that, once the database is done, I'm gonna probably jump right back in to prepare you for the market. So it is gonna be sooner than you think. So I would say pay attention and don't look left and right. I've seen people come and go, right? I've seen people fall on the way and don't get to see the end result because they looked on the left and say, okay, this guy, he didn't even, let's say showing up, he's not even showing up. Why should I, right? One thing that you want to remind yourself, everybody is here for a job. Even if it's one person here does everything correctly, I'm gonna personally make sure that that person gets the job. Everybody here, as long as they stick around, gets a job. And we'll make sure one way or another way, right? Either we're gonna try to help you out with our contacts, because we have a lot of students who probably work on many companies, and we get leads, we get basically information on who's hiring. But most importantly, we're gonna make sure that everybody gets hired as long as they do the work. All right, guys, with that said, I will end the night. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
You're
I
welcome.
do have one issue, but if we can do it later if you want. I'm trying to run the test again. It's not running. It's giving me an error running.
What is the error message?
It keeps saying error run. Hold on.
Let's see.
Error running scenario, verify customer element class, jerkin because different providers.
Okay, so you separated the driver, but you're not using the driver anywhere, right? Driver and my driver. So go back to the my step definition. Click on that. Okay. So here you haven't made any changes yet.
Yeah,
right? So
I had started it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so make that changes, and then if it doesn't work, send me a screenshot and I'll send me a screenshot of the error. that you're seeing. So I'll help you.
Okay, awesome.
But if you go to your Gherkin and if there's any problem there, then you can fix. But otherwise, I don't see any issue actually. No, not the plugin. I'm talking about the feature file. If you click on it, so auto insurance, just click on that. Yeah. Yeah. So you see, you have fields that you need to complete, and after that, it will probably work.
Okay, fine. All right.
But any issue, guys, just personally reach out and say, hey, here is the issue, and I'll. At this point, like I said, you guys. Any problem you guys are facing, we can do at beginning of the class, or we can even do after the class. But the important thing is that we're not getting stuck with one problem. And any problem that you face is going to teach you something new. So keep facing the problem and then try to resolve them as well.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you guys next time, Saturday.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.